Hi everyone, it's me again, and Squish Gang is present. And today we're going to be talking about someone that I have been asked to talk about several times. A system that goes by a few different names, but the channel DissociaDID. And I want to say that I have a feeling that I'm going to approach this very differently than the people who asked me to make the video think I will, and everybody thinks I will upon reading this title, and I want to preface with that at the very beginning. I also want to start with a few trigger warnings for this conversation. Trigger warning for mental health, trauma, speculation on mental health disorders, as well as some stuff about gender identity and racism as well. And before we get into this whole video, just a reminder, links to social media, sources, ways to support the channel, including Amazon, Patreon, everything that is on my face, including affiliated links to shop it, along with anything else I feel like linking, all down below. And anything that is affiliated versus not is marked as such. I did quite a bit of research for this video, and I still feel like I couldn't come to as many conclusive ideas as I would have liked to. And I want to preface with that. And I have this long kind of disclaimer that I wrote, and I'm going to read it off of my iPad just because I want to make sure I do not get it wrong. Because I'm trying to put as much thoughtfulness into this whole ordeal as I possibly can. So I want to write, I have the following disclaimer. I am not a mental health professional, nor do I claim to be. My education is in English literature and rhetoric, as well as education. Rhetoric means discourse, argumentation, and the way people position themselves, not psychology. This video is taking the approach of viewing the online interactions, the way the dissociated systems deal with things, and online scandal and speculation. I am personally not claiming with any certainty of anyone's conditions, except a little mention about Trisha Paytas, because that's been confirmed, but that's it. But I will address general speculation. That is it. I am not a therapist. I am not talking psychology, and I'm just going to present the information that I've come across for this. 3 parts to the video. Who is dissociated, and a brief discussion of dissociative identity disorder, or DID. Part 2, online speculation, the Anthony Padilla interview, and resulting perception. And part 3, dissociated's ongoing copyright lawsuit. So let's get right into it. Part 1, who is dissociated? Briefly, before we get into the person or the system that we're talking about here, and also I have never spoken about DID before, really at all. So if I have to correct myself a couple times bouncing around, please forgive me. I will try to edit out when I can, but I do kind of talk fast, and sometimes I don't notice. So I don't re-say the sentence. So if you find that I've skipped or something, it's just because I'm trying to make sure that I do this right. So to briefly describe what DID is, or dissociative identity disorder, is a disorder that was once called multiple personality disorder, which is no longer the name that is being used. Now, one of the reasons this is, which I've found in my research, is instead of the condition consisting of multiple personalities, which personality and identity are often linked to each other colloquially, it is instead saying that the personal identity of the individual is fragmented into different sections, kind of depending on the circumstance. So when discussing DID, the individual body, they describe themselves as a system because there's the identity fragmentations, and they use we when describing themselves as opposed to I, which I would be describing myself as, for example. I'm not doing this in a way to seem professional or talk over anybody. I'm just kind of giving anybody who might have a bit of confusion a kind of an idea of what we're getting into. And within the system, each fragmentation, or whatever that system wants to define it as, I suppose, tends to be called alters. And alters is what dissociated uses to describe themselves. So that is what we're going to be using vocabulary-wise. Typically online, I find that creators with DID have some sort of primary name that they are referred to. And at a time for this system, it appeared to be NIN. The reason I'm saying that at the time is because a lot of videos were removed and re-uploaded. The timelines are very dicey. That is why for this video, I'm actually going to link every single thing that I watched, because I literally have not been able to make a conclusive string of what I've been thinking, which is the first time it's ever happened to me for a video. So I'm just going to present you all with everything I could find and just let people want to check me or not, depending on the circumstance. To my understanding, the person like that starts most of the videos, again, I'm not sure how to describe this, goes by Kaya. There was a term that they used that I didn't write down and I forgot. And if I find it, I'll pop it on the screen. Their childhood name was Chloe. DID is described as a disorder that typically manifests within individuals that had strong child trauma in really pinnacle times of development, thus creating fragments of the individual's perception to deal with certain circumstances. And that is also why often with switching between alters that there's points of amnesia where one cannot remember transition periods or entire times in certain alters. And the reason why I'm hedging so much is I said I'm not a professional. And as I continue, I will discuss the information that I came across. And you'll see that building a concrete opinion on everything is not as easy as I hoped. And I find there's a lot of disingenuous nature in the reporting that some people have done, but also disingenuous nature within dissociated and their perceptions, and everything just seems really messy. So this video is just showing kind of what an outsider's perception is looking in as someone who hasn't been around for the whole ordeal. And some may say, well, why'd you bother make a video about this? Because I'm trying to clarify to people maybe where their thoughts are coming from when looking at this entire situation. And I've actually been sitting on this video for, I think now going on 3 weeks. Normally a video takes 1 to 3 days for me to put together. So, and I've been working on this almost every single day. And I've removed parts, I've added parts and things like that. That's why I was frustrated that I forgot to write something, because it's been so long I've put into this just for me to forget a silly detail like that. So Dissociate is a system that lives in England currently and has a channel with over 1 million subscribers who describes themselves as a mental health educator advocate that focuses on DID, or a system that talks about trauma and believes in self-diagnosis. Now, personally, I am quite weary of self-diagnosis entirely for things that are as serious as dissociative identity disorder, or any disorder for that matter, really. I understand that people do not have access to professionals, that healthcare accessibility is very different depending on where you live. However, there is a point where you want to rely on somebody with more expertise. And this is coming from somebody who was really sure that my mental health diagnosis was going to lean one way, and I got completely thrown backwards. So, for example, I was somebody who, I have a lot of friends with the ADHD. I relate to a lot of the symptoms of ADHD, but some were kind of missing. But everywhere I looked, it was like, oh, you have, autism spectrum disorder, like ASD or ADHD, probably. Like, you're leaning in that kind of direction. And then upon getting an actual diagnosis, medication, meeting with therapists and a doctor and everything, it wasn't that at all. I was lacking the general dysfunction issues that come with those disorders as opposed to what I actually have. And it not only was I just incorrect, it led to me having like a couple of weeks of like a full-blown identity crisis, because you start to kind of seek community, you start to kind of identify with certain things, and it can damage you. I find that with people who talk about self-diagnosis, who, vouch for it as like completely certain and you will be right and whatever, they never talk about if you're actually incorrect and how it feels to be incorrect. And so what I thought was ADHD was actually an anxiety disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder. It really threw me for a loop. And I'm really shocked that I'm sharing this, actually. I've been very hesitant to say anything about this because I have this kind of shame about being wrong. And before people try to say, well, maybe they're just underdiagnosing. No, the dysfunctions, like the general dysfunction and stuff like that, the ADHD has, I don't have any of that. I don't have any problems with waking up. I don't have any problems with being irrational or having impulse control issues. I don't have issues with a lot of with attention. I thought I had attention issues, but it was just I would get so anxious and get in my ruminating thoughts that I would not be able to do something, which are completely different. But the thing is the way things are presented online, being so oversimplified, you can really mistake one thing for another. So to advocate for self-diagnosis for something that is very serious, it's a touchy subject.
To simplify what I'm trying to say in a more digestible fashion, the point that I'm trying to make is not necessarily that I was just kind of flippant with looking into things, or that, somebody's probably going to argue, well, if you obviously didn't have these functional issues, then, why would you think you even had that in the first place? Key point that I'm trying to say here is I am not a psychiatrist. I am not a clinical psychologist. I am not a therapist. I am not a professional. And neither are the people that DissociaDID is advocating to diagnose themselves. There are so many misleading pathways to go into information on places like social media that you become kind of enveloped with this identity as opposed to looking deeper into the disorder and the process to figure out what is actually going on. For example, if you have ADHD and you take an SSRI, it can cause panic attacks. But the reverse can also happen. If I was starting to take Vyvanse or Concerta, it would have just triggered my anxiety to a level that I had never even met before. So if I started trying to advocate for myself as someone with ADHD and then force the medications, then I would have seriously harmed myself. That's what I'm trying to say here, is that regular people aren't professionals for a reason. You need to do years of school for a reason. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get to here.
And DissociaDID is actually written for apparently is written for an article on this as well. That was sourced in a video that I will have linked down below, and I'll put a picture in if I can find the article. If I cannot, then I'll put just the video clip. Self-diagnosis is quite controversial in and of itself as something to be vouching for, but there are many other reasons that the system is so controversial, and that will actually bring us to the second part of the video. Part 2, we have online speculation, the Anthony Padilla interview, and the resulting perception. So, I have to be frank. It was really hard to research for this video, okay? I agreed to do it in a live stream given kind of the general interest of the audience I had on the topic. And once I kind of dipped my feet in, I felt like I didn't really want to give up on it because of everything I was seeing. But here's the thing. There are essentially channels. It's either there's a channel dedicated to trashing every single move. This is when I was looking for stuff. There's like this channel that's like dedicated to like trashing every single move that the system does all the time. Like she uploads like multiple times a week. And I have a problem with that when there's like a very clear motive. It's because it's also just like very small components of every single thing. And I guess I could try to relate it to something like an Amberlynn Reid reaction channel, I suppose. But the thing is that it's not based on saying that, like, let's say like Amberlynn Reid doesn't have binge eating disorder in the way that like this channel is like, no, the system does not have DID. I don't know. It was just, it really, I don't know. It's something, it's with the coverage too, and the way that it just rubbed me the wrong way of like, there's some sort of like maybe personal vendetta there or something that there, but I could definitely be wrong. What I'm saying is when there's only, what I could find was one channel that was dedicated to every single video being about this person. The videos are only about the court case that we'll get into the third part, or there are a couple of random one-off commentary videos, but they're all 2 years old. That is all of the content I could find. As opposed to what other topics, let's say if we go back to Amberlynn Reid, there's lots of channels that make, you know, a random one-off video about the phenomenon. There's a lot of, you know, like there is a community of reaction channels as opposed to just one person. There's a bit more to kind of go off of there. So it makes me very hard to approach anything with any sort of certainty, because all of my academic like research bells are like ring-a-ding-dinging that like I don't really know what I can trust here. So as a result, I'm not able to find coverage that I find to be truly 100% accurate given the little amount of videos and the motives that seem to be arising a lot of the time. And this is not me siding with Dissociated either, because I will get into that they have motives as well. So with this in mind, please take into account everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. But we're going to get into some of the allegations I have seen, and I will try to put clips in here or there to anything that somebody has said regarding these. I'm going to use as little of that one channel as possible, just because, again, I could be completely wrong about them, by the way. This is not like a hate towards that channel. That's why I'm not like, saying names or bashing or whatever. It's just strange how many, because now they're starting to come from my recommended, and it's like every day there's another one, or every couple days. It's like, So one of the first allegations is racism. They had altars that they claimed, Dissociated had altars that they claimed to be different races. And sometimes they'll say Dissociated, sometimes I might say Kaya. One of the altars had an Indian accent, which Kaya claimed that they've never heard one, but that it was some sort of miming kind of thing.
Here are a few examples of her bad behavior. Let me start with the boring stuff first. So basically, some of the altars are, and I quote, different races. Now you may see the issue with this logic. If not, don't worry, some minorities with DID saw the problem and did what you do. Say, that's not cool. And so she apologized and promised to make a video listening to minority creators and owning up to her mistakes. Of course, this was bad. All set on Tumblr, and if you look for said video on the YouTube channel, it's not there. No, it wasn't deleted. If it was, I'd be able to find an archive. Somehow it never managed to be made at all. It's almost like that apology was worthless, made only to shut critics up temporarily on the way to more clout. The deletion of the Tumblr would definitely suggest so. Like I said, terribly uncreative and unsurprising. But wait, there's more! They've claimed one of their altars, Amira, is Indian, and this part literally happened. They used an Indian accent in one of their videos.
Altars such as dog altars may have been created when a child who was abused. It is not unusual for children who are abandoned or neglected to be starved.
Now, Nin tried to wave this off on Instagram as, I don't know anyone with an Indian accent. Anyways, it was because of echolalia. I'll just give you the dictionary definition of echolalia and let you form your own conclusions.
But also, when Black Lives Matter protests were happening, and there was backlash due to other kind of remarks and altars and things like that regarding the Black community, people were upset at Kaya for not addressing things properly previously. And instead of addressing anything, the system was just kind of deleting comments that were critical of them. And they also did this kind of weird get ready with me where they were like kind of weirdly fetishizing people with darker complexions, and it was quite strange. So that's one of the allegations.
Yeah, back in June when the police murdered George Floyd, Nin posted some ooh kind words of support on Instagram. Of course, these posts rang a bit hollow with some people after the previous incidents, and so they helpfully pointed this out. Nin took it well. By well, I mean deleting their comments and calling them aggressive. And on top of all this, she's posted a video where for at least one segment, she goes on and on fetishizing people with brown skin, and it's just really weird. It makes me uncomfortable to watch this.
Dark skin is beautiful. So damn pretty. One of my friends is mixed race, and actually two of my friends are mixed race. This applies to both of them. One of them's half Japanese, half English, and one of them is half Caribbean. I can't remember specifically where. And they have the most gorgeous coffee-coloured skin, so pretty. And then the half Japanese girl has like a tan colour, like it's not dark, but it's tan, and she's just so beautiful. The boy who's half Caribbean, so gorgeous. When I was younger, before I knew about racism and stuff like that, I know village, but I'm talking about like young, like 6 or so. I always wanted to have dark skin because I thought it was really pretty.
If there are any people of color in the comments that can clarify things a little bit more, people who are in general just kept track of this better than I have, because like I also go to school and stuff, so I don't have time to like sift through all the Reddits and all the comment sections. And like what I've really been doing with how much research I put in this video is like I'll just every moment I'm like traveling, I'm commuting to work, to class, or anything, I'm just listening to videos on this person. Like that's what I've been trying to do, and I want to be able to bring it, but I start my full-time position. Again, I don't know how many times I can say, like, I'm trying to figure out what's going on, but it's quite difficult. Next, there is another allegation that they are a bad friend and use other people with dissociative identity disorder or just people that they are affiliated with in general. This comes into the Anthony Padilla interview. Anthony Padilla, for those of you who may not know, may not remember, is one half of the original duo Smosh. Now, Anthony Padilla has been making kind of documentary-esque interview type videos the past couple of years. Anthony Padilla was doing an interview for people with dissociative identity disorder, and their agency had put out kind of this like, oh, we need like a slot of 3 systems that want to do the interview. It was supposed to go to somebody else. This was another channel that goes by Multiplicity and Me, and they were having issues with their management. Apparently, what I gather was Multiplicity and Me made a post about it, and then essentially Kaya slid in and contacted Anthony Padilla and took the slot. To summarize this, there is a hot tea video, and I'm going to put the clip in that describes it maybe a little bit better than I can. But that's kind of essentially the TLDR of the whole thing. It seems like.
Originally, Dissociated was not even meant to take part in this interview. At the time, Anthony was working with a casting agency that had reached out to Multiplicity and Me, another system that is part of YouTube's DID community. However, the agency did not initially realize that Multiplicity and Me were UK-based, and they lacked the budget to bring them over to the US. Nice research. Multiplicity and Me said that they were glad to give the opportunity to a US system, but they then found out that the person selected identified as an endogenic plural. Endogenic multiplicity is different from DID, something Multiplicity and Me frequently talks about. Multiplicity and Me wrote to the agent offering to come to do the interview using their own funds, and the agent agreed and said a producer would reach out to discuss the next steps. However, days passed and no call came. While that situation was being sorted, Multiplicity and Me posted about it in a group that Nin was part of. It turns out that Nin saw this post and reached out to the same casting agent who spoke with Multiplicity and Me to inquire about the interview spot. Even though Dissociated is also UK-based, and the agent responded saying Multiplicity and Me were handling it. Unsatisfied, Nin found a separate email address for someone else in the agency and was able to swoop in, also offered to pay her own way, and was accepted as the third interviewee. And Multiplicity and Me lost out. Unsurprisingly, Anthony had communication issues with this agency and quickly stopped working with them. Multiplicity and Me were understandably very hurt and disappointed and said that they felt like the rug had been pulled out from under them.
Another and the final of the major kind of accusations I'm going to go into prior to the next section with the copyright is that they're faking the dissociative identity disorder. Now, there are a few reasons I came across besides just like a general disdain for the system or anything like that. And I am saying things like system and they and all that kind of stuff because again, how many times can I say this? Not a professional. And I believe that if you don't have certainty, you want to try to give them the benefit of the doubt if you can, you know. The system also got into like this kind of huge conundrum with Trisha Paytas a couple of years ago when Trisha Paytas decided to preach that they had dissociative identity disorder even though they don't. And this whole kind of back and forth began where they were both saying, oh, you're faking and all this kind of stuff. But that's not why. Like Trisha Paytas did not like start the fire of like this person. No. It's because people are saying that the recorded switches are too convenient. That's one of the reasons that they have too little reaction to them. Because a lot of people describe the switches between alters to be kind of like this overwhelming experience. It's like migraines and there's exhaustion. And it's because you'll see in a very recent video, actually, like there's like really convenient timing for when everything happens to a point that it seems like it's being played up.
Which is to help us raise money for our legal fees. All the money goes directly to our lawyers. We don't see or touch a penny of it. Our lawyers are partnered with Crowd Justice itself, which is a legal fundraising platform just for legal cases. Any support and anything you have to share goes a long way, and we're really grateful for your support. I will see you in the next video. Lots of love, everybody. Okay, the two new alters I spoke about, also say hi. Okay, lots of love, everybody. Bye. Oh my god, what do you want to say? We'll do it now because I'm going to shut the camera off and go to bed. I'm getting nothing. I don't know. Somebody wants you to know something, but I don't know what that something is, so I can't tell you. Bye.
And the types of alters that they have apparently are documented. Like it's like the type of ones that like are very stereotypical in like kind of harmful media, you know, thinking like the kind of Split movie type. I'm not saying that's exactly what she has, that's not exactly what they have, but like that's kind of the argument that people are saying. It's like, oh, there's like the standard protector and the basic little meaning alters that are children. And some are even saying that they're taking advantage of littles on live stream, like they're kind of fetishizing that. Again, not sure if that's true or not, or how that really goes. And then there's this infamous Spotify playlist that Kaya made that was apparently music all the alters listened to, but then it was all made in the same day. And most are saying that if you have whatever, I believe right now it's 9, or at the time it was 9 alters, could be wrong with that though, that it's highly unlikely that it would all switch, like you would hit every single one in the same day. So for that to have been made all at the same time is like really doesn't make any sense. Yeah, so it's kind of just this idea that like it seems like it's for play, like they're kind of picking and choosing as opposed to like having actual switches. That's kind of the general consensus that I've seen. Another allegation actually is that they allegedly defended someone who drew underage people depicting fetishes that they had. This person went by Nan, who was dating Dissociated at the time of like all of this coming out, and there was something to do with sneezing pictures. Now, if we kind of try to tie everything together, there's quite a few issues that have kind of come through a lot of these different accusations and how everything kind of came together. One of the main issues was that the Anthony Padilla interview boosted their fame to like just I think almost triple the subscribers. So I recall it was like from 300,000 to like pushing 1 million. They seem to have been friends with a system that they snaked for the interview, creating this idea that there's a motive for attention and wealth above the well-being of themselves and or others. And that can kind of feed into the idea that they might have been faking it the whole time. Because the thing with kind of the current landscape on YouTube is that it's so saturated, right? That you kind of need to have a niche. That's like a lot of the advice that I've heard is you need to have a niche. And my niche is like the rhetoric and drama stuff together, that kind of thing, right? Having this, disorder that's very uncommon is because regardless of if Kaya wants to claim, it's as common as bulimia and being ginger or something like that. That's still like 1% of the population, and that she says they say it's between 1 and 5%. That's still 1 to 5%. There's still 99 to 95% of other people, right? So it's still very rare. So that could be like a niche to have. There's not a lot of competition in that way. So if you seem like you'll push people down for wealth, that is why people can kind of lean into this idea that it might have been fake. And the nature of the poor response to criticism in general also creates an audience response that they're projecting this image above what is right. So where's the line, right? So if you're willing to defend alleged predatory behavior, racist behavior, fetishizations, and all that kind of stuff, why would you not fake dissociative identity disorder? Like you don't seem to have a strong moral compass. So where's your line? That's kind of the challenge that people are facing. And that is how these things can kind of spiral. The point of fame that they got to, along with the timing, being over the last couple of years where people are in a huge position of economic strain because of the pandemic and stuff like that. They also have this like incredibly expensive Patreon. Like we're talking like top tiers, $300. I had 3 tiers because at one point, just because if people were going to subscribe to the higher ones, I would start doing this stuff, but then nobody did, so I took them away. And I think my Patreon's like $2 Canadian or something like that a month, or $2.50, something like that. So imagine like $300 a month. And there was a ton of perks. There was like a Skype call with alters. There was our Discord call or something like that. There was like merch every couple months. Yeah, exactly. $300 for every couple months. I saw that in some of the videos I watched, which I said, again, everything will be linked in the description. And apparently what was being promised was not even really being fulfilled, even for those that were paying for these very expensive tiers. So then tying that all together back to the theory of the diagnosis being fake is that there's this established pattern of behavior that there is an entitlement to other people's kindness. And when you're in a community that is as controversial and is as full of people with, intense trauma, because that's where the disorder manifests, there's going to be a lot of vulnerability in the people that you're interacting with and the people that are confiding in you. And that is why, again, people are being unclear on where the lines are. Because on one hand, there is a chance that, like, these people are all wrong. Kaya has a dissociative identity disorder, and maybe there's been issues with alters that have been causing this behavior, things like that. But there's also that can swing completely the other way, because we've seen crazier stuff online, let's be honest. It was all kind of an act of evil. And especially with an audience that, or people that are identifying in a community that are as traumatized and as vulnerable as they are. So if we get into part 3, closing up, this is kind of like the current thing that's going on with Dissociated, which is a copyright lawsuit. So there's been a lawsuit over the past couple years by somebody named Sergio Costa, who was someone who had once worked with Dissociated on the channel. Then, I guess, it seems like it was because of the scandals, but it was maybe some infighting and a relationship as well. that was clarified in one of the videos, but then again, I'm nervous about the coverage, so it was a multitude of things, but there was some sort of connection there. But once they were done with the channel, Sergio Costa, they started copyright striking every video they felt that they were involved with, including ones that had this disclaimer that Mr. Costa had allegedly helped draft and had kind of insisted that be put on videos retroactively to kind of like cover Dissociated's ass if anything was to happen with, because they're not a mental health professional, right? Same way as I had that like huge disclaimer earlier, where I'm not necessarily having one in the description in the same way. So they claimed those videos as well. Mr. Costa, as it says in the legal brief, and Evangelina Skov has been covering it since the beginning, so I'll link their videos down below and they can explain that further. But a couple of days ago, Dissociated did release a video that they had gotten all the videos back with the disclaimers, hence why there has been a lot of re-uploads, which has been muddying the very timeline that I've been trying to follow. So there are many channels that are actively covering this in real time. However, Dissociated is crowdfunding the legal case. And even the recent video that came out a couple days ago was asking for money for the crowdfunding. But when you have over 1 million subscribers and you're getting several 100,000 views a video, in AdSense alone, that's likely over 5 figures a month. So when you're doing that and you haven't fulfilled things in the past, even though they're saying that the legal fees are like it's not being touched by them at all, I think a lot of people are still into the idea that you should just be able to afford it anyways, right? This same thing kind of happened with Ethan Klein and the FUPA fund, right? This kind of frustration with the legal funds and where everything went and that whole involvement. So that's kind of typical with things that are crowdfunded online, I find. So that is kind of where that's leaning. Overall, it's just been kind of very confusing. There's been a lot of people who don't like Kaya or Dissociated. There's been a lot of people that feel very passionately about a disdain, but at the same time, a lot of the conversations and comments seemed pretty positive on Dissociated's videos, and they seem to have a really large community. And as someone who doesn't dabble in, especially now after this whole self-diagnosis thing, I wasn't self-diagnosing myself, by the way. I was kind of just like, oh, maybe this is a possibility. I kind of stepped back and don't really dabble in mental health communities as much. I just kind of want to talk about like the outsider's internet perception and how everything might have come together for this. So in conclusion, I find that there are many videos, channels, and opinions that show sometimes the internet can be an unclear place. And sometimes you have to kind of put your hands up and be like, well, I don't really know. And you're allowed to be uncertain. We're not all meant to be experts on everything. Same way as, Kaya had to put the disclaimer about the, mental health specialist stuff. And also, completely related, I kind of want to do a Shoe on Head video, but can someone explain me who that is? Because I thought Shoe on Head was like a shitpost Twitter account, and then apparently they got like a whole channel and everything, but then they're like a leftist, but they're also not, and I'm very confused. Anyways, links, sources, ways to support the channel, including links of everything that is on my face and where to shop it, Amazon, Patreon, the whole ordeal. Everything I could possibly find will all be linked down below. I'm sorry that this video is such a mess, but I'm just trying to piece this all together, and my little 2 brain cells that I'm rubbing together are not able to do it, it seems. But I still wanted to bring this forward because I feel like sometimes admitting that things on the internet is confusing is so worthwhile. And like nobody does it. I'm here for the fellow besties that like got coconuts and Barbados in the noggin, you know what I mean? Email to suggest longer form content down below, along with you could DM me on the social media. If I don't answer, I still read it. I just forget to respond to them all the time. Or I just like they get these super long emails and I'm like, what? Do I email back? Yes. So I read them, but I don't necessarily respond to them. But anyways, y'all have a great day wherever you are. And I'll see you when I see you. Bye.
Ask people on Twitter, what was the first name of the worst person you've ever met in your life? These are basically the top 5. Number 5, Claire. Sorry, Claire. Number 4, I think this is a little weighted right now, but Andrew kind of makes sense. Number 3, Ethan. Number 2, Eddie. I'm sorry, Eddie. I have a friend named Eddie. I think Eddie is a nice name. Number 1, worst name, leagues above. And let me just say something. J names in general were catching so much heat. Like if you have a J name, it's not good. But the number 1, you are the worst person based on people's experience, Josh. I'm sorry.